welcome to another episode of Spark Talk. First of all, I would like to apologize to our regular listeners for our unplanned disruption of regular programming last week. Things happen, life is busy. But we're back with you today, and we will have multiple episodes this week, in fact, given everything that's happening in the world. Anyways, today we are discussing Iran and the ceasefire, the Memorandum of Understanding between the US and Iran. Now, many on the left have declared Iran the victor, with groups like the Revolutionary Communist Party calling this a, quote, humiliation for Trump, a strategic defeat for US imperialism, and a turning point in the world situation, quote. Against this kind of a take, we write that the ceasefire is more like a stalemate. Nothing won, nothing resolved. So what exactly is the situation, and how should revolutionaries approach it? To get into all of this, I'm joined today by Comrade Ray. Hi, Ray.
Hi, Mansa.
Thank you for making the time. So, what's our take generally? Do we think Iran is a victor in this?
Okay. Well, I can see why people on the left, why people who want to fight imperialism take some cheer, take some encouragement from the fact that Iran is still standing as a country when it was threatened with annihilation by Trump and by Israel. And it's good that Iran is still standing. We fought for its defense. We said every leftist should be siding with Iran against the imperialists. Basic duty, you know? But I think we have to look at the actual result. Now, it's not that Iran took hits, you know? It took a lot of losses, including some of its military establishment and hardware. Its economy has been shattered by all the U.S. attacks on top of the years and years of sanctions. Well, that'll happen in a war. And if you fight back against the imperialists, you are going to take losses. So the fact that they took losses isn't the issue. The issue to us is that when you look at the bigger picture, the balance of forces in that region really hasn't changed. America still dominates it, and it still dominates it with Israel being its key policeman on site and with the support of the Arab Gulf states. So that hasn't really changed. What we've said is that, look, the basic outcome is that Iran still stands to fight another day and is going to have to fight another day because the U.S. is as committed as always to remove the obstacle that the Islamic Republic represents to its domination, total domination of the region. And whatever nasty words Trump had for Netanyahu, you know, in the recent period, because he wanted to get the deal done, because he got a slap in the face. He didn't get a super smashing defeat, but he got a slap in the face with this war because he didn't get what he wanted. The elimination of the regime, which he went in saying that's what they wanted, and the destruction of Iran's nuclear capability. He didn't get that with the war. Okay, good. But the balance of forces hasn't really changed. That's the important thing. And so, especially if you're on the left, that's what you've got to look at. We've got to look at how the direction in the world with the U.S. on its rampage to try to keep its hegemony over the world when it's eroding from it day by day by day. That's what we want to do, change the direction that the world's going in. And for that, we need a significant defeat of the imperialists. And how are we going to get that?
Yeah.
That's in short, you know?
Yeah, I appreciate you setting the broad framework about the balance of forces. Now, you spoke about Iran's, the hits that Iran took in terms of sort of weakened infrastructure and so on and so forth. Now, believe it or not, I was speaking with my dad and he was like, Iran won. And look, their bases, the Americans, their bases are destroyed. So, you know, it's not just the left, but there's also ordinary people talking about the losses that the Gulf states took. For example, you know, you'll hear lots of analysis about how it will take a number of years for some of them to restart their oil infrastructure again from whatever. And, you know, I don't know. I don't know actually the degree of hits that the U.S. bases have taken. But what if I was to come back at you with that? Like, okay, fine, nothing fundamental has changed, but you can't just disregard that they've also been, I guess, they've also taken significant losses. Would that change anything in your overall motivation?
I don't think so, because those facts are true.
Mm-hmm.
But the U.S. obviously has the capital to
Mm-hmm.
repair the damage
Yeah.
that was done in this war very easily. The Gulf states do too. But the real point is that, again, this question of, did it change the dynamics in the region?
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of, look, the fundamental issues involved in the decades-long drive of the U.S. and Israel against Iran are what? Its military capacity, especially nukes,
Mm-hmm.
Iran's allies, from Hezbollah to the Houthis, etc. The way that Israel keeps bombing Lebanon, like day after day, it depends which day specifically, but, Israel's not actually part of the agreement. Technically, they can attack Lebanon and, people will chastise them for that, but it doesn't stop them from doing that to eliminate Hezbollah.
Mm-hmm.
Even Iran's missile capacity, what the imperialists will allow it to have, all that's still to be decided in the negotiations that are supposed to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those are the issues that are fundamental to Iran's security.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where when we say nothing fundamental has been achieved, that's what we're talking about, because there will be further struggle.
Yeah.
That we can say with certainty.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the key thing.
Yeah, and I think, just to add to that, the bottom line is that the U.S. has not been kicked out of West Asia.
Right.
That's what we want, to actually, allow that region to lay a basis for that region to actually begin to go forward on a progressive basis. But that's not been done. So yeah, certainly a humiliation for Trump, I'm sure, but not a victory for Iran. Okay, cool. Now, I just want to touch briefly on those who don't think this is a victory. Actually, some of those elements come from within the Islamic Republic itself. So you mentioned in the leaflet that actually hardline elements within the Iranian government are opposed to this. What's the rationale there?
Well, that's been reported by just about everybody writing about the ceasefire deal. I think that's simply a reflection of what we said earlier, that nothing fundamental has been resolved.
Right.
So it's hard to have real insight into the political tensions inside the Iranian government, but I think that's what it really reflects at bottom.
So they would view this as a capitulation.
Yeah, they didn't want to. They didn't want to stop the conflict until they won something real and sustaining. Now, what they would be satisfied with, we can't know. We're outside that picture, but that's what it basically is. I think it's just a reflection of the reality. And the more intelligent, commentators in the West will say things like, well, on balance, Iran won, but 2 months from now, it could all kind of go up in smoke, precisely because none of the fundamental issues have been addressed. And others will say, well, on balance, Trump kind of got what he wanted, but took too many losses to get there. It's that kind of discussion.
Right.
And I think for the left, if I can, look, there's kind of a broader problem that a lot of the socialist organizations see things through very rose-colored glasses about the world, So the fact that there were some political strikes in France and Italy over the Gaza genocide, one-day affairs, didn't affect the majority of the working class, but they happened, and that's good. But that was seized on as a way to say, see, the workers are fighting back against what Trump and the Zionists are doing. Except it really wasn't that. It was sort of one-shot strikes, maybe a series of them in Italy. But again, it didn't put the energy into the working class to fight back more generally. And you see that politically in that still workers in advanced capitalist countries, because they're so angry at what's happened to them over the last few decades especially, and because they don't really see their organizations, their trade unions, the social democratic parties, fighting for the workers, which is what they were supposed to do, generally they're turning to the right. And a lot of groups on the left are denying what's a simple, verifiable fact by blowing these kind of soap bubbles in the air. And that's really a danger, because unless you understand the political situation for what it is in the world, you can't understand what socialists have to do about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay?
And I think that it's the same kind of attitude that colors how they're looking at what led to the ceasefire deal and the current war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In what sense?
Because they'll see the positive side.
Yeah.
And they won't see how, well, actually, it didn't really fundamentally change anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, if you don't understand that it didn't fundamentally change everything, then you don't understand the need to be arguing, debating, and fighting on the left and with anti-imperialist fighters everywhere about what kind of strategy we need to bring to the workers' movement so that we can win some decisive victories. You know?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right about the rose-colored glasses. I mean, along with that, I think there's a ton of impressionism that, events happen and then you draw conclusions, right? Like the quote I cited earlier from the RCP, it says it's a strategic defeat for U.S. imperialism. Well, for it to be a strategic defeat, it would mean that the U.S. has been expelled from the region.
Right, like Vietnam.
Right.
There was a strategic defeat for U.S. imperialism.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's very disarming. I think that's the main problem with it, because, all right, there's a number of things. I think one, not understanding the real fundamental dynamics and therefore the tasks issuing from it. I think the other thing is then it's like, well, what does it mean for what we should be doing?
Right.
Because, okay, so let's imagine for a second that the Islamic Republic and the IRGC was able to inflict a strategic defeat against U.S. imperialism and expel them from the one they haven't. But let's just say this was. But then what does it mean? It means that revolutionaries have no role, right? The IRGC can do it. They can defeat U.S. imperialism. What are we going to do? What do we have to do in the Middle East?
Right. Well.
So, yeah.
Let's cover both sides of that. Look, let's be really clear here. We stood with Iran during the war. We said that every leftist, anybody who's fighting for oppressed people anywhere, their duty is to defend Iran against the imperialist attack. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people on the left wouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. The most they would say is, well, let's have a quick peace. Let's just be for peace. We don't like this stuff. Mm-hmm. It says, no, you want to side with Iran to deliver a defeat to the imperialists when the fight is actually on. And it's really important that they didn't give in, unlike in Venezuela, where in Maduro's own government, he had these traitors that said, okay, Trump, you want to invade? Fine, we'll be your new compradors. Take Maduro, take his wife. Mm-hmm. That treachery directly served American imperialist interests, which is obvious. And today, this is from a few days ago, the Cuban Communist Party is basically giving up the ghost, saying, okay, we'll introduce these widespread economic reforms, which basically sells out Cuba to foreign capital.
Right.
If you want to get down to the basics of it. No, we have to resist that. Mm-hmm. So it's good that Iran resisted, but to what end? Because the strategy of the IRGC and of the leaders of the Islamic Republic as a whole is what? To be able to maintain the integrity of Iran so that it can exist. Okay, fine. We defend the right of Iran to exist. But if you're on the left, do you want the status quo in the world? The status quo right now is going against the working class everywhere, right? American imperialism is making clear that this is a nasty and it's going to be a nastier place with what it's going to do to maintain its hegemonic role in the world. Are we satisfied with just, okay, it's the status quo ante to some extent, even given all the damage that Iran has suffered? Or do we want a strategy that says, look, the way to actually drive the U.S. out of the Middle East is to unite the masses of the Middle East against their common enemy. And that means mobilizing the Arab masses against their ruling regimes that are serving as tools of American imperialist interests, because the interests of those regimes are totally tied to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Iran, too, the problem is that, and this is going to come up again, even if the peace holds for now, is that all the underlying causes of the massive social discontent in Iran will certainly resurface.
Yeah.
And it's because the Islamic government there their rule is inherently oppressive to the masses of people there, and the Arab masses in the region see it as a threat to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't provide a different way of looking at it, because from the point of view of the leaders of the Islamic Republic, that's the way it's got to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we wanted Iran to deliver the U.S. a stinging victory, but you're right, that doesn't answer the question for revolutionaries. We can't leave it at that.
Yeah.
But even to deliver that decisive defeat, we think we need a different strategy. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to pick up on that last point about internally within Iran and the contradictions and discontent which will bubble up from some of the sources that I usually follow. Like there's already reports that following the ceasefire, that the government started to crack down more on dissent internally. I mean, executions are a regular thing, and they were throughout the war as well, but that they've picked up a little bit as well. But it's like if you look at the situation, what Iranian, like what people who hate the government but who want to fight imperialism, who want to fight for a different Iran, not the pro-Pahlavi, pro-Zionist Iran, what they will see is they will see a large bulk of the left cheering on the strategy of the Iranian government, and that will automatically repel them from the international left, which has that policy. And internally itself, of course, the Iranian society is oppressive to Kurds and other minorities and women and so on. So it's just, I think, the starting point is not what strategy to actually unite the masses through their struggle. That's the only road to really build a genuine anti-imperialist struggle which can take the fight to its conclusion. That's not the starting point. Right. Instead, it's sort of seeing snapshots but divorced from the underlying currents of history, and then just tailing after them and saying, okay, well, now it's a defeat and now this is a victory and so on. And I think it's just that, we've been talking a lot. Well, this is a general theme we talk about a lot on this show, but the real problems in the left and why it's small and irrelevant to the mass struggles of the day. And I think this is one example of it, to just so uncritically declare that this has been a good outcome. I think this can only be disarming for people who want to really build an anti-imperialist strategy in the Middle East. But I think also it will really repel a lot of Iranians who are looking for ways to fight the regime in a progressive direction. It will really deepen the divisions between them at home and then those internationally who are just cheering this on.
I think that's a really good point. And what that underscores to me is that socialists, communists, what they needed to do during the conflict was make 100% clear to everybody that they're fighting with the Iranian state and the Iranian people against the imperialists, but in a way that does not sacrifice the independence of the working class without abandoning that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's really a crucial thing. And it's related to issues in the imperialist countries where, with the huge growth of the right-wing populist reaction to the old liberal order, the left is still clinging on to institutions of that liberal order and looking for any viable thread of that, like in Britain with the Andy Burnham, the hosannas for how he's going to be the answer to reform in the next elections, when this guy helped set up the whole situation in previous Labour governments of screwing the workers for the benefit of the City of London finance capitalists.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not to mention Labour Friends of Israel.
Yes, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of problem here.
Yeah.
right? So we have to fight for the national liberation of oppressed countries, no matter what their leaderships are. But it's got to be from a revolutionary class perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you have that, you can't effectively link up the struggle in Iran with, for example, struggles of the working class in the U.S., which was plenty angry at Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of his former voters are not going to vote for him next time around. And one reason he wanted the deal signed was he knew he was screwing the Republican Party in the next round of congressional elections, which are quickly approaching. Right?
Yeah.
He knew all that. But what are you going to do with that working class discontent? You have to have a class axis because, I'm sorry, let's say Trump suffers a huge electoral defeat. Let's say the Republicans get washed out, which it's not going to happen quite like that. What are you left with? You're left with the original Zionist standard bearers, which is the Democratic Party, okay? And they were the ones that for decades and decades were the most fervent standard bearers for Zionism. Okay?
Yep.
Zionist Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So
no, there's a somewhat, I don't know if the word is coherence, but like I think errors of programmatic deviation, shall we call it, or it fits into a broader whole, which overall doesn't stem from how do you fight to unite the working class and fight for its interest in this period, and all of that requires like a real understanding of what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah. One thing I did want to talk about, and you talk about this in the article, is quote anti-imperialist forces. So one such, which there's a huge segment of the left which talks about it, is China.
Right.
Right. So, one thing we've been talking about for some time on the show and our press is how, as U.S. imperialism sort of experiences its crisis and seeks to reshape the world order, one reason why it's able to get away with so much that it has gotten away with so far is because would-be challengers are not actually stepping up to the challenge.
Yes.
And I think the main one that fits that criteria is China. So
because of its economic and other weight in the world, a lot hinges on that. I think that it was clear during the Iran war that the Communist Party of China leadership approached it the way they do all such things in the world, which is that they're doing this kind of balancing act. So Iran was a key trading partner, and diplomatically they were kind of aligned also with China. China did provide satellite technology that was very useful for its military operations. And I think some of Iran's hardware came courtesy of China. But at the same time, from the beginning of the conflict, what they wanted to do was have a peaceful settlement, right? And they work through Pakistan, especially early on in early rounds of talks, to get the first fragile kind of ceasefire deal going, right? So it didn't really use its weight to help Iran deliver the kind of defeat everyone needs to see of the U.S. Okay? They didn't do that. Now, what could they have done? All right, some people are going to accuse us of wanting to start World War III. But look, China's got clout. And we've made that point before about its monopoly of rare earths. They're so crucial for military and technological developments and production in the world. So there was just something I thought was kind of piquant just in the last day.
What's piquant?
Piquant, it means,
spicy?
Yeah, and kind of acidic, So China apparently has restricted trading with some American companies that are involved in processing rare earths, which it does have a chokehold of the supply of rare earths. And you think, okay, they just did it. Great. Was that a belated protest of what the U.S. was doing to Iran or earlier to Venezuela, which was another key trading partner? Or what's trying to do to just smash Cuba into submission, finally? Says no. The move by the Commerce Ministry was in response to a decision by the U.S. to add Chinese entities to their Chinese military companies list. So that's the official term that the U.S. has. So China was willing to use that weapon it has, right? Its monopoly, almost 100% of rare earths, which it also, processes. For what? To defend its own interests. That's how they do everything. Well, why aren't you doing that to demand that the U.S. end its blockade of oil into Cuba?
Right.
Why didn't you do that when they kidnapped who was supposedly your friend, Nicolas Maduro, in Venezuela? Why didn't they do that at the very beginning of the attacks on Iran, going back to last year, the 12-day war? But it doesn't approach things like that. And if you read commentary about what the thinking is in the Chinese leadership, one thing that comes up very clearly is that they think, okay, we're in a strong position in the world. We've grown economically tremendously. We don't do what the U.S. does. We don't throw our military around. And the way Trump is doing it right now, he's helping to further erode America's position. We're happy to let that happen. But Trump will not be satisfied, nor would his replacement be satisfied with America's eroding position. They're quite willing to wreak great havoc throughout the world to stop that from happening. And to defeat their enemies and to remove the obstacles to doing that. And that includes China. So in several articles from Venezuela to the current war, we said, don't get backed into a corner. The People's Republic of China is the most strategic enemy that American imperialism sees on the world stage. You are backing it into a corner. That's the worst way to fight, okay? So really, we're partisans of the defense of China against imperialism. We are not partisans of the policy and strategy of the Communist Party leadership because they believe in this gradual sort of shifting of forces. And in the meantime, to make that keep happening, we have to keep stability in the world so we can keep our economy humming, right? So we're not going to do anything that actually threatens America's position on top of all that. And that's a danger to the People's Republic itself.
Yeah, I think this, as you just said, it's a question that's been running through a number of our articles on recent international events because, as there's more instability in the world, as the U.S. goes after countries, China's just sort of sitting idly by. It will do here and there. It will do enough to, I think, throw enough sand into the eyes of, elements on the left who will say, oh, well, look, China did give hardware to Iran. What are you talking about? It is helping its allies. Well, there's help and there's help.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like if this was, if revolutionaries were actually at the head of the People's Republic of China, this would look very different.
Exactly. Because that's the thing. They have basically the same outlook as the Iranian government does, right?
Yeah.
Keep the status quo. But the status quo is what American imperialism is upsetting everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And they do have the dominant power.
Yeah.
Militarily, in terms of capital, in terms of the dollar is still the world's commodity trading vehicle. Yeah. That's still the power in American imperialism's hands.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
They're going to use it. So this strategy of just waiting things out, it's kind of the obverse of the old reformist socialism strategy, right? Where, well, we'll just build up our electoral, cloud over the decades, and eventually we'll be in a position in a parliament where we can introduce a legislation that will blah, blah, socialist.
It's parliamentary socialism on the world stage.
kind of thing that doesn't take into account a very simple fact that we're in the imperialist age. Things happen, qualitative things happen through crises, world economic crises, trade conflicts that lead to actual wars, that kind of thing. Yeah. That's the epoch we live in, okay? If you're a socialist, you can't abide by gradualism. Gradualism will eat you alive.
Yeah.
We need a strategy to get the working class off the back foot, to begin fighting back, so that it's in a position to assert itself as an independent force on the world stage.
Yeah.
That's not going to be, look, we have to fight for that as best we can now. All socialists should be doing the same thing. But that's going to be the force that can determine things in a progressive direction. Pointing to how the working class needs to take the power in their hands. It's not a tomorrow thing.
Yeah.
But, fight for that now. Because this idea that somehow if you don't intervene, aggressively to try to actually deliver real blows to the imperialists, it's not going to be in favor of the working class.
Yeah. No, what you were saying just about gradualism and China and so on, it just, there's an odd sort of parallel here because you see the same kind of gradualist methodology in terms of people who call China imperialist.
Right.
And it gradually just changed.
Exactly.
And went from a workers' state. Somehow, somewhere, there was a counter-revolution. Maybe it was because the CPC's policies changed or the reforms made a qualitative change or something. But then it all gradually happened. It wasn't like a decisive moment like in the USSR or so on and so forth. And it just reminded me, we wrote somewhere. Sorry, I have to find this quote. Yeah, we have this whole section in our current Spartacist. We wrote this plenum document to really set out our understanding of what the Trump presidency has in offer. And we talk about Marxism versus gradualism, as a whole approach. And there's this quote that I love. I just want to read it out for our listeners. It says, politically, Western liberals, social democrats, trade union bureaucrats, advocates of the BRICS Plus alliance, Chinese Stalinists, and many so-called revolutionaries all share something in common. That is, variations of a gradualist and pacifist conception of history and world relations that paralyzes them in the face of Trump's renewed offensive. I just think that's so spot on because you see it happening right now in real time where, what you just laid out about China's strategy. Okay, fine. Of course, you should look out for your interests. That's not a crime. But I think the mistake is that the interest of the Chinese worker states is not separate from the interest of the international proletariat. So you need to put a leadership in place that will see it that way.
That's right.
And that will mobilize that will come to the aid of its allies or, not even an ally, but those who are being gone after by the US. And that's just not the framework that we see, unfortunately, dominate on the left.
Right. But that is the framework that should be the basis for regrouping revolutionary socialists around the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's sort of, I want to stress that point too, because the ICL is not exactly a mass party. Okay. There's all these Trotskyist tendencies.
Yeah.
There are various communist parties around the world that can be, some of them sort of left wing in their own countries, given what they're up against. But these questions, this is what we have to debate on the left, including through common work. Like when we agree on defending Iran, we were marching with other organizations that don't share our strategic views and even some of our positions, but the ones that actually, took that stand, we're quite happy to march with them. But let's have the debate and the discussion about how left forces can regroup around a basic strategy and program that can get the working class to assert itself as a decisive force. And it'll take time. There needs to be some basic building of these, of this consciousness, including in the working class. But that's what the left should be thinking about now, right?
Absolutely.
And be critical about your view of the world situation. Look at it from a broader perspective. What's the dynamic in the world? Okay. And let's have those debates, discussions, and hopefully fighting together, when we see common cause.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. You did the spiel I usually do, but I appreciate that. No, I appreciate that. But, to just make it concrete, I think, there's a need right now to have this discussion on the terrain of what really is the balance of forces in the Middle East, because overwhelmingly, I believe the left, as per my reading, the left has said that Iran won.
Right.
Let's go home.
On balance, yeah.
So I think that's actually a debate that needs to be had right now. So we've put out what I think is a very minority view currently. And if you think, what are the problems with our argumentation? Let's have it out.
Right.
welcome differences and opportunities to debate. As you probably saw from our last episode, we are more than welcome and we'll be very, very democratic in hosting you. But yeah, that's what's needed. There's the actual interventions into the movement and the working class, but there's the theoretical debate and clarification. So yeah, let's do that. Anyways, thanks, Ray. I appreciate it. That was a nice discussion. I appreciate that discussion on gradualism and how we tie that in there as well. Cool. All right. Thanks. Cheers.
Bye.
Well, I ain't got no smoke, at least not with you. And I don't know if you don't know, but there are just a few of oligarchs and capitalists profiting massive profits, holding us down in lockstep.